The mansion held its breath as the ocean wind pressed against the glass. A chandelier hummed like a trapped insect above marble veined like old scars. A single footstep cracked the hush, and then the world detonated. A shot split the hall, and a crown without a throne tumbled to stone. Luca read the room from the driveway, watching lights flare and die. "This was never supposed to be tonight," Luca said. "Not like this." A phone vibrated with a message that tasted like iron. "It's done. The king is dead," the screen told him, flat and bright. Luca felt the ground tilt and memory rush in like smoke. He had promised one clean way out, and now the door was gone. Sirens began as whispers, sliding up the cliffs like knives. "Hold your line," Luca said, "or you'll drown in someone else's tide." The house answered with echoes and moving shadows. Somewhere, a ghost wiped prints from metal and made peace with hell. Luca crossed the threshold and the house's perfume of money curdled. Marble sang under his shoes as if warning him back. "Stay sharp," Luca said. "Grief is a mask with knives inside." A guard swore at the radio and pointed down the west hall. The chandelier bled light in nervous beads, jittering on the floor. A portrait watched like a judge paid to look away. "Who moved first?" Luca said. "And who wrote tonight's script?" The message burned in his pocket, a brand he could not drop. He remembered a lesson about power only existing in silence. The silence here was broken and clawed. A maid sobbed into a sleeve in the doorway. Luca felt the old oath rise and choke. "If we chase a ghost," Luca said, "we die tired." The scent of cordite guided him left, into the room where the crown fell. He told the guard to seal every exit before the tide learned to speak. In the study, the safe hung open like a broken mouth. Papers lay scattered like feathers from a plucked bird. "This is not panic," Luca said. "This is choreography." He traced a pattern in the mess and found its rhythm. Every piece led away from the obvious into a neat dark. A photo frame lay face down, glass spidered. He lifted it and saw a dinner long ago, all teeth and promises. "We fed on vows," Luca said, "and now we swallow ash." A guard asked if he should call upstairs, and Luca said no too. The upstairs had already answered with silence. He set the photo down and let it face the ceiling again. His pulse rang in his ears like a distant bell. "We can't outrun this," Luca said. "We can only make it chase us." The study light flickered once as if it knew a name he didn't. Elena arrived through a servant's gate with rain on her coat and purpose in her eyes. "Someone rehearsed this," Elena said, "and we clapped on cue." Luca felt relief and dread shake hands in his chest. She slid a small recorder onto the desk like a playing card. "Traffic spiked at the docks an hour ago," Elena said, and then went quiet. Quiet meant control, not fear. "They wanted the echo to carry here," Luca said, "not the sound." Elena nodded and pulled a map from her sleeve. Red lines drew a net around the bay and up the hills. "You still trust the old chain," Elena said. "Or do we cut a link tonight?" Luca tasted wire on his tongue. He thought of a balcony and a smile that never cracked. "If the house is the stage," Luca said. The cue came from the city. Elena folded the map once, as if sealing a pact they hadn't spoken. Word moved like venom through veins no one admits exist. A broker in a penthouse closed a laptop with a smile too slow. "Markets prefer certainty," he said to an empty room. In a backroom bar, a courier switched envelopes and tipped the bartender with a gold coin. A dock crane paused, then resumed like nothing had happened. "They are laundering panic," Elena said, "and selling calm." Luca watched the message duplicate into whispers and wagers. The house gave up nothing except its stains. "Find the first phone that rang after the shot," Luca said, "and find who answered." The guard nodded, eyes wide with a new education. Night thinned, but dawn would not pardon anyone. "We choose the story now," Luca said, "or the story chooses us forever." The city listened from its windows, bored and hungry. Somewhere, a lighter clicked, and a plan decided it was real. Rivals gathered in shadowed clubs, whispers growing teeth. Luca said, "They smell blood, and they will carve the corpse before dawn." A broker smiled as his glass clinked, sealing futures with men he hated yesterday. Elena's voice sharpened, "We cannot fight them all, not yet." Luca stared through smoke and saw ghosts trading seats at tables they once feared. The city trembled under the weight of invisible crowns, and every rival wanted to wear one. The night thickened with shifting debts and secret vows. Luca thought of Victor's hand twitching toward that phone, the last command of a dying king. "This is not war," Luca said. "This is inheritance gone rabid." The guard reported fresh shipments, rerouted south, fingerprints of old enemies burned into crates. Elena warned, "If the Empire dies, the pieces will be sold to wolves." Luca nodded, jaw tight, knowing the wolves were already inside the gate. The rain eased, but memory stayed sharp. Luca leaned against the balcony rail and stared at the skyline jagged like a knife rack. "You can't bury the past," he whispered. "It keeps learning to crawl." His reflection on the wet glass showed an old soldier who had traded one war for another. Elena joined, coat pulled tight, eyes measuring the distance between towers. "You look for salvation in the wrong places," she said. He thought of Sofia's face, calm as stone, and wondered how long her silence would last. The city pulsed like a wound stitched poorly, ready to tear again. "Every ghost I buried is back," Luca said, "and they've brought friends." Elena's reply was simple, "So burn them, or they will burn you first." He nodded, knowing that burning would scorch what little of him was left whole. The enforcer moved through the corridors like a shadow of iron. Dmitri's boots echoed softly, each step promising consequence. Guards parted without a word, eyes lowered. He paused at Victor's fallen portrait, gaze unreadable, then adjusted his holster. "Loyalty is not a choice," Dmitri murmured. "It's a sentence." His breath fogged in the cold hall, but his resolve stayed warm with purpose. Luca watched him from the landing, unsettled by the silence that followed him like a cloak. Elena whispered, "He bleeds for no one but the crown, even if the crown is ashes." Dmitri nodded once, turned his head toward the darkened stair, and continued downward. The air thickened in his wake, as though the walls themselves knew that judgment had just passed. Luca clenched his fists and knew that men like Dmitri did not falter until there was nothing left to guard. The docks groaned as cranes slept half-finished over containers. Salt air stung as Elena spread her map across the hood of a car. "Shipments rerouted here," she said, tapping red circles. Luca studied the marks, jaw locked. "They are carving up what's left like scavengers," he replied. Seagulls cried overhead, but the silence between containers felt heavier. A flicker of headlights passed and vanished, leaving them deeper in shadow. "If they own the water," Elena warned, "they choke the city's throat." Luca thought of debts hidden in ledgers and blood ink signed years ago. "We drown if we chase all streams," he said, "but maybe we poison one river." She looked at him with steel in her eyes, knowing he was already halfway to deciding. Somewhere beyond the waves, a horn sounded, and it felt like a warning sent just for them. The victim's sob broke the night's rhythm. Sofia sat by a fractured window, knees drawn tight, phone still glowing in her hand. "They will come for me now," she whispered, voice flat as stone. Luca entered, the weight in his step louder than his words. "You are already part of this storm," he said. "Running only feeds it." Her eyes, red from tears not yet shed, met his with a strange calm. "Family is supposed to mean safe," she said, "but family built this prison." Elena shifted uneasily in the doorway, knowing Sofia's truth cut too close to her own. Outside, the city hummed with deals and betrayals, but inside the room felt like a grave waiting to close. Luca's hand hovered above her shoulder and stopped short. "If they take you," he said, "I lose more than a war." Sofia looked back at the night, already resigned to the hunt. The meeting unfolded in a warehouse draped with dust and shadows. Rivals sat at a table scarred by knives and time, their eyes hunting each other more than the words. Luca said, "Every man here waits for a crown that will not fit." A rival smirked, glass in hand, testing his patience. Elena whispered, "This is theater dressed in blood." Overhead lights flickered like nervous signals, and the air tasted of rust and betrayal. A gun rested untouched on the table, its presence louder than any voice. Luca kept still, knowing movement would be read as weakness. "Loyalty is spoken in silence," he said, steady as stone. Murmurs rippled, promises wrapped in venom. The walls heard more lies in that hour than truth in years. Luca realized the empire was not breaking apart, it was being auctioned piece by piece, and every bidder was already armed. The betrayers smiled, as if secrets were currency. Sofia sat across from him, her voice low. "You carried poison in your pocket." He chuckled, tapping his glass. Luca watched, anger buried beneath control. "You never knew me," the betrayer said. "You only loved the mask." Elena stiffened, sensing the mask slipping now under the weight of arrogance. Shadows drew longer on the walls, as the truth trembled at the edges. Luca's hand tightened around the table, veins stark as stone. The betrayer leaned closer, voice coated in honey. "Loyalty is the leash you chose. I cut mine long ago." Silence followed, heavy enough to choke. Sofia whispered, "You were blood, and still you cut." Luca's chest ached with betrayal, deeper than bullets. The hall echoed, every word now, a nail in the coffin of trust. Trust cracked like glass under boot. Luca stood in the corridor lined with crates, breathing smoke and regret. Elena approached, steady voice hiding fear. He was always playing both sides. Luca whispered, "And I was blind enough to call it loyalty." She touched his arm, anchoring him in storm. "The betrayal does not end you unless you let it," Elena said, her eyes unwavering. From the far corner, Dmitri appeared silent as death itself, watching them with cold judgment. His silence spoke volumes. He had heard everything, and it would not die with him. Luca felt the noose tighten, not from enemies but from family. "We are hunted by our own blood," Luca said, "and the walls will not hold." His voice carried no fear, only the weight of war already written. In the alley behind the warehouse, rain fell like broken glass. An ally emerged from the fog, once rival, now hesitant savior. Marco leaned against the brick wall, grin hiding scars. "We want the same thing now," Marco said, "a fire to cleanse what's left." Luca studied him, every instinct resisting. Elena whispered, "Desperate men are dangerous allies." Marco shrugged, cigarette ember glowing. "I was dangerous long before desperate." The rain hissed, covering secrets too sharp for words. Luca exhaled, conceding, "If we walk together, betrayal is expected, but betrayal will cost you blood." Marco nodded, grin fading, eyes sharpening like knives. A pact formed in silence, bound not by trust but by necessity. The city watched through puddles, its reflection fractured like their fragile alliance. The war declared itself in whispers turned into gunfire. Rival gangs clashed in a street, lit by burning cars, the night alive with chaos. Luca shouted orders, pulling Elena behind cover. "This is no longer survival," Luca said. "This is extermination." Marco fired into the shadows, covering their retreat. Dmitri appeared, cutting down enemies with precision, his loyalty still chained to Victor's ghost. Sofia screamed as glass shattered, ducking under rubble. The city's veins pulsed with fire and fear, its alleys running red. Luca felt the betrayal of blood like a wound that would never close. "They don't want a throne," Elena said. "They want ashes." The air reeked of smoke and iron, every shot writing history none would forget. Luca's eyes hardened. War was no longer coming. It was already here. The first strike came with the scream of tires and the bite of gunfire. Rival soldiers stormed the block, masks hiding fear, rifles spitting fire into the night. Luca shouted, "Hold your ground, or we are already ghosts." Elena pulled Sofia into cover as bullets tore concrete apart. Marco hurled a grenade into the advancing crowd, its echo cracking windows. Dmitri stepped forward, calm as stone, his shots falling enemies with precision. The street burned with chaos, yet Luca's mind sharpened like glass. "This is not a fight," he said. "This is the test of who still breathes tomorrow." Rivals poured through alleys, their rage louder than reason. Smoke swallowed the stars as the Empire's bones groaned under the weight of war. The city, once a stage, had become an execution ground, and every shot was a prophecy of ruin. The battle dragged into the alleys, where neon signs flickered like dying stars. Luca led them through narrow streets, slick with rain. "Every corner is a trap," he said, "so we become the trap." Marco laughed, adrenaline sparking, firing into shadows. Elena whispered directions, her map etched into memory, her voice the only calm. Sofia clung to her jacket, trembling but silent, eyes wide with fear. Dmitri scouted ahead, boots silent on wet stone, his presence as much warning as shield. Gunfire cracked overhead, ricocheting sparks onto metal shutters. Luca's heart thundered, not with fear but with grim resolve. "We carve a path, or we vanish tonight," he said. The night answered with echoes of war, the sound of empires eating themselves alive in streets that would never forget. Amid the chaos, Dmitri halted, staring at blood pooling under a broken sign. His hands trembled, a rare fracture in the armor. Luca saw him hesitate, whispering, "Even stone can crack." Dmitri muttered, "I built my life on orders, and now there is no one left to obey." Elena approached, her voice firm, "You decide what you are now, not the Empire." His eyes narrowed, haunted by years of violence replaying in the smoke. A rival soldier stumbled into the alley, bleeding, gasping for help. Dmitri raised his weapon, then lowered it, jaw shaking. "Mercy is weakness," he whispered, yet the shot never came. Luca realized the enforcer's chains were breaking, one link at a time. But a man without chains was either dangerous or lost, and neither offered safety in this war. The smoke cleared enough to show Marco's loyalty bending into trust. He stood beside Luca at a barricade of overturned bins. "We fight the same beast," Marco said, "so let's bleed it together." Luca nodded, wary but willing. Elena loaded a fresh clip, muttering, "Trust is earned in scars." Sofia's voice cracked, "Then you already have mine." Marco glanced at her, eyes softening for the first time, then hardened again with purpose. Together they unleashed fire into the advancing rivals, their timing almost seamless. Luca felt something shift, a bond forged not in oaths but in necessity. "If this night ends," Luca said, "it ends with us deciding, not them." The war raged, but for one breath, they stood not as enemies but as survivors daring to carve their own fate. By dawn, silence fell heavy, broken only by the drip of water from broken pipes. The Empire lay bleeding, streets charred, bodies scattered like forgotten promises. Luca stood in the center, exhausted yet unbroken. Elena's voice cut through. "It collapses from within faster than they can burn it." Marco leaned on rubble, smoke curling from his weapon, his grin gone, eyes hollow. Sofia stepped forward whispering, "This city will never forgive us." Dmitri arrived last, blood on his hands but no victory in his eyes. "We defended nothing," he said. "We only delayed the burial." Luca raised his gaze to the fractured skyline. "Then let the burial be ours to control," he said. The war was far from done, but for the first time they saw the Empire crumbling, not as myth but as truth too sharp to ignore. The betrayer's smile widened as he stepped from the shadows, his voice sharp with triumph. "You never understood," Adrian said. "The Empire was never yours to protect." Luca's jaw tightened, fists clenched, words like fire in his chest. Elena whispered, "He's been guiding the knives all along." Marco swore, realizing the battles they bled in were scripted by Adrian's hand. Sofia's eyes filled with disbelief, trembling as truth shattered her world. "You were family," she said, her voice breaking. And still you chose to burn us. Adrian laughed bitterly. Family is the first chain I broke. The silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. Luca finally said, "Then tonight you inherit nothing but the ashes you created." His voice echoed like a blade, and everyone felt the final war had just been declared inside those walls. Chaos erupted when the first bullet cracked the silence. Rivals surged in, steel against steel, blood against blood. Luca dove for cover, shouting, "We hold the line or we die tonight." Marco unleashed a storm of fire, every shot echoing defiance. Elena calculated their moves, her voice sharp with commands. Sofia huddled low, gripping the ground, her breath shallow. Dmitri entered like a phantom, cutting through enemies with mechanical precision. Adrian stood untouched, orchestrating destruction with a glance. "This is my stage," he said coldly. "And you are the audience to my victory." Luca's fury erupted, a vow forming in his eyes. "You will not leave this room as king," he muttered, the war spilling from words to flesh. The docks revealed the Empire's reach extended far beyond one family. Luca uncovered ledgers etched in blood and politics. "This isn't crime," he whispered. "It's an economy." Elena's eyes scanned columns linking syndicates to senators, banks to cartels. "They built this city on lies," she said, "and it stands because of silence." Marco spat, disgusted. "We fought ghosts, and the puppeteer sat in daylight." Dmitri's hand hovered over the pages, his face unreadable. Sofia whispered, "If this truth is seen, the world will burn." Luca closed the book, his voice steady. "Better to burn than to rot in their cage." The revelation broke not only trust but the illusion of control. The Empire wasn't collapsing. It was being exposed, and its roots were deeper than anyone dared to imagine. The revelation hit like thunder, but betrayal struck harder. Adrian's voice sliced the room. "Did you think you ever had a choice?" He stepped closer, the weight of his deception suffocating. Sofia trembled, tears carving her face, whispering, "You were my blood." Adrian's smirk faltered, but he did not break. Luca's rage burned, yet his control held like a blade against his own throat. Elena's eyes narrowed, her voice sharp. "You wanted a kingdom, but all you built is a grave." Marco raised his weapon, but Luca held him back, shaking his head. "Not yet," Luca said. "Truth is the sharper weapon." Adrian laughed bitterly, though his eyes betrayed the crack of fear. In that moment, the war ceased being about power. It became about survival of the soul. From the shadows, the true mastermind revealed himself, a figure who had never bled but controlled every blade. A politician's voice filled the hall, smooth and venomous. "Your empire was never yours," he said. "It was only the mask of power I chose to wear." Luca's eyes widened as he realized every war, every death, was staged by hands higher than blood. Elena whispered, "We've been pawns in a game played in marble halls." Marco cursed, spitting on the floor, his rage useless against such reach. Sofia gripped Luca's arm, fear etching deeper. Dimitri's jaw clenched, silence hiding fury. "You burned our world for profit," Luca said. "But tonight your mask cracks." The mastermind smiled coldly. "Masks don't crack, they change." And with that, the war grew larger than family, larger than Mafia. It became a war against the invisible empire that ruled all. The estate loomed at the edge of the city, its windows glowing like eyes that had seen too much. Luca walked through the iron gates, heart heavy but steady. "This is the lion's den," he whispered, "and I won't leave without fire." Elena followed close, her eyes sharp, calculating every shadow. Marco loaded his rifle, smirking through the tension. "About time we killed the puppeteer." Sofia trailed, pale but resolute, clutching a folded note. Dmitri moved last, his silence carrying the weight of years of blood. Inside, Adrian waited with that same venomous smirk. "You brought an army to bury me," Adrian said. "But this estate is my kingdom." Luca's voice rang steady. "Kingdoms burn, Adrian, and tonight, the flames are mine." The war shifted from streets to halls, every step pulling them closer to the inevitable reckoning. The first shots rang out inside the grand hall, ricocheting off marble pillars. Luca dove behind cover, his voice sharp. "Every wall here is theirs. We tear it down piece by piece." Marco fired bursts, pushing enemies back with defiance. Elena moved with precision, calling orders, her tone slicing through chaos. Sofia crouched, trembling, yet clutching the note as if it were armor. Dmitri stepped forward, bullets grazing past, his aim unshaken. Adrian's laughter echoed above, his voice dripping venom. "You came here for revenge. But I came here to watch you die." Luca's heart thundered as smoke thickened, shadows dancing like devils across the ceiling. "We fight not to survive," he said, "but to make sure your empire ends here." The marble shook as the empire's final battle began. Dmitri cornered an enemy soldier, his rifle steady, yet he hesitated. The man begged for mercy, fear written on his face. Luca's eyes locked on Dmitri, whispering, "Choice defines you now." Dmitri's hands shook, the weight of years pressing harder than bullets. Elena stepped close, steady gaze. "You are not the Empire unless you choose to be." Marco barked, "Kill him or hell, kill us all." Silence cut deeper than the screams outside. Finally, Dmitri lowered his weapon, turning away. "No more ghosts," he muttered. Luca felt a shift, the enforcer no longer just executioner, but a man, fighting his chains. Yet the choice brought risk, and every second of mercy carved new cracks in their fragile survival. The war no longer belonged to blood. It belonged to the choices they made in fire. The final confrontation erupted in the estate library, bookshelves burning as flames spread. Adrian circled Luca like a predator, gun in hand. "You were always my shadow," Adrian sneered, "born to follow, never to lead." Luca's grip tightened on his pistol, his voice cold. "I was never your shadow, I was your reckoning." Marco and Elena fought off guards at the doorway, while Sofia screamed as debris rained down. Dmitri held the line, his rifle cutting through waves, his silence fierce. Adrian's laughter cracked as Luca pressed closer, their words louder than the fire consuming the room. "This family was mine," Adrian shouted. "But you killed it." Luca answered with steel. "No, you did." The flames roared, devouring shelves of lies, as two brothers prepared for the final shot. Blood and fire merged into silence. Adrian lay on the floor, his smirk gone, eyes wide with defeat. Luca stood over him, chest heaving, pistol shaking in his grip. "You were never king," Luca said, voice raw. "You were only the traitor who burned his own throne." Adrian coughed blood, whispering, "You'll inherit nothing but ruin." Luca's silence was the only answer. Elena stepped closer, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and resolve. Marco leaned on rubble, breathing hard, muttering, "It's done, but at what cost?" Sofia sobbed softly, clutching the note now stained with ash. Dmitri wiped blood from his hands, his face carved with regret. The estate groaned, its bones collapsing. "We end it here," Luca said. "The Empire dies tonight." As the flames consumed the last hall, the family's war ended not with victory but with ruin carved into every soul. The mastermind's bodyguards scattered when the flames consumed the estate, leaving only silence. Luca staggered into the courtyard, smoke clinging to his lungs. "It's finished," he muttered, though the words felt hollow. Elena steadied him, her voice calm. "No empire dies clean." Marco limped, rifle at his side, spitting blood. "We buried kings, but the graves are ours too," he said. Sofia looked to the horizon, whispering, "Nothing left but scars." Dmitri stood apart, his face heavy with choices, blood drying on his hands. The night was ending, but its ghosts refused to sleep. In the ruins, Luca found Adrian's final words etched into a scorched note. "You'll never kill the shadows," it read. He clenched it, knowing truth lived beyond corpses. Elena said, "The syndicate isn't dead, only unmasked." Marco barked bitter laughter. "Then we fought for smoke." Sofia's eyes watered, trembling. We fought for survival. Dmitri's silence lingered, but his gaze admitted regret. Luca folded the note and whispered, "Survival is the only throne left." The ashes of the empire smoldered, but the war beyond these walls breathed still. The city streets bore the scars of nights of war. Luca walked among broken cars and shattered glass, each step heavy with consequence. Elena whispered, "The world sees only victory, but all I see is ruin." Marco shook his head, "Victory doesn't feed ghosts." Sofia reached for Luca's arm, her touch fragile. "We can't rebuild what was never whole," she said softly. Dmitri trailed behind, his silence louder than any confession. The city seemed quiet, but its silence felt like preparation, not peace. In a quiet chapel hidden from the city, Luca lit a candle for the dead. "This flame won't cleanse what we did," he said. Elena replied, "It wasn't about cleansing, it was about surviving the storm." Sofia knelt, praying with tears falling silently. Marco stood by the door, eyes sharp, guarding shadows that weren't there. Dmitri sat in the back pew, head bowed for the first time, his silence resembling prayer. Luca whispered, "The empire ended, but the cost was our souls." The candle flickered, smoke curling like unspoken truths. Night fell again as Luca walked alone into the empty streets. The phone in his pocket rang once, sharp against silence. He didn't answer. "The war is over," he said, though doubt weighed each word. Elena watched from afar, her expression unreadable. Marco vanished into alleys, his loyalty ended with the flames. Sofia remained, clutching her note, her eyes hollow yet unbroken. Dmitri faded into the shadows, carrying ghosts no one could bury. Luca's footsteps echoed, his soul scarred beyond repair. The empire was gone, but the world it poisoned was still alive. The war may have ended, but peace had never been part of the bargain.